Imagine a punishment so terrifying its very name sends a shiver down your spine. Lingchi, death by 1,000 cuts, was no myth. It was a state-sanctioned execution in Imperial China for over 1,000 years. The goal wasn't just death, but maximum pain and humiliation. Lingchi was a public spectacle, a brutal lesson for all who watched. The horror lay in its methodical, drawn-out process. The executioner, a master of pain, would make a series of cuts, keeping the condemned alive and conscious. Every slice was felt. This punishment attacked body, mind, and spirit. It was the ultimate deterrent, a fate so awful it was meant to stop crime through sheer terror. Lingchi was the law's most dreadful statement, a demonstration of the state's absolute power. Unlike other executions, Lingchi celebrated the process of dying, making a performance out of suffering. It wasn't just about justice, it was about terror and control. The public nature meant the horror was shared. The crowd became part of the ritual. Lingchi reveals a society where power and fear were tightly bound. The fear it generated was a powerful social glue, binding people to the law out of terror. To understand Lingchi is to look into a darker part of human history. Justice was measured in cuts, and the line between law and cruelty was erased. It's a chilling reminder of what happens when the state demands more than just a life in return. The spectacle was a warning etched in flesh and blood. The condemned suffering was a message, defy the state and this could be you. The crowd's fear was as important as the victim's pain. Lingchi was a tool to enforce order, not just punish crime. The executioner's knife was the emperor's will made visible. The ritual was designed to haunt the memory of all who witnessed it. Lingchi's legacy is a testament to the power of fear in shaping society. It's a story of power, authority, and the extremes of human cruelty, and it's a warning from history that we must never forget. Lingchi wasn't random violence, it was the law's ultimate weapon, reserved for the gravest crimes. Written into imperial legal codes, it was official policy. Treason topped the list. Plotting against the emperor was an unforgivable sin. The state responded with a punishment as severe as the crime. Parricide, killing one's parents, was another offense. Unthinkable in a society built on filial piety. The family was sacred. To destroy it was to threaten the social order itself. Lingchi reinforced these core values with terror. Other capital crimes included mass murder and betrayal of military commanders, acts seen as threats to the empire's stability. Lingchi was never used lightly. It was the final option for the worst of the worst. The punishment had to be a lesson, a public demonstration of the consequences of crossing society's ultimate lines. This wasn't mob justice, it was deliberate, codified policy. From the Song to the Qing dynasty, the law specified when and how Lingchi should be carried out. The state claimed the right not just to take life, but to do so in the most agonizing way possible. It was a declaration of total authority. The law became an instrument of fear, and Lingchi was its sharpest edge. The spectacle was meant to horrify, not just punish. The condemned suffering was a warning to all. Lingchi's legality reveals the nature of power in Imperial China. The state's message was clear: some crimes demand more than death. The ritual was a public reminder of the consequences of ultimate betrayal. Lingchi was the law's most terrifying tool, and its shadow loomed over all. Lingchi was more than execution, it was public theater. The condemned, the executioner, and the crowd all played their parts in a carefully staged spectacle. Executions took place in public squares, maximizing the number of witnesses. The state wanted the horror to be seen and remembered. The audience's fear was as important as the victim's pain. The message, this could be you. The psychological impact was profound. People confronted the raw power of the state. The executioner was a performer, skilled in prolonging agony. His task, keep the victim alive, conscious, and suffering. Each cut was calculated for pain, not death. The process was ritualized with a set number of cuts. The crowd watched, gripped by terror and fascination. For the condemned, the punishment was total, physical agony and public humiliation. To be stripped, tied, and dismembered before strangers was the ultimate degradation. In Chinese belief, a mutilated body meant torment in the afterlife. Lingchi's cruelty extended beyond death, destroying hope for peace even in the spirit world. The executioner's knife was the state's will, and the crowd's fear was its power. The spectacle was a lesson in obedience. Lingchi was a punishment that annihilated body, dignity, and soul. The memory of such executions lingered for a lifetime. The ritual was designed to haunt, not just kill. Lingchi was terror made flesh. Lingchi was a methodical ritual of pain. The condemned was brought to a public square, stripped and tied to a post. The executioner approached with sharp knives, ready to begin. The first cut signaled the start. There was no turning back. The executioner removed flesh in a specific order, keeping the victim alive as long as possible. Cuts targeted the chest, arms and legs, each one deliberate, each one agonizing. Sometimes opium was given, not for mercy, but to keep the victim conscious. The number of cuts varied, 8, 24, even hundreds in some accounts. The crowd watched as the ordeal stretched on for hours. The executioner monitored the victim, prolonging suffering until the final fatal blow. Death came only after prolonged torture, usually a stab to the heart, sometimes followed by decapitation. Dismembered body parts were displayed as a warning. The head might be placed on a pike for all to see. The ritual was state propaganda, demonstrating the emperor's absolute power. Lingchi destroyed not just the body but the spirit. It was a punishment meant to echo beyond the grave. Lingchi's shadow stretched over China for nearly 1,000 years. Established around the 10th century, it became a fixture in the legal codes of successive dynasties. From the Liao to the Qing, slow slicing was a recognized form of capital punishment. Dynasties rose and fell, but Lingchi endured, a testament to the state's reliance on fear. Emperors like Hongwu and Yongle used it to crush opposition and consolidate power. The Qing dynasty continued the practice, though more sparingly. Westerners who witnessed Lingchi were horrified, shaping the West's image of China. Lingchi was not an anomaly. It was central to imperial justice. The state's right to inflict such pain was rarely questioned. It was seen as necessary to uphold order and protect the throne. Lingchi's millennium-long existence reveals the power of tradition and organized cruelty. It was a system built on fear, not mercy. Lingchi ended in 1905, just before the fall of the Qing dynasty. Its abolition was driven by reformers who saw such punishments as a national shame. Western pressure and new ideas about justice pushed China toward change. Reformers argued for a humane legal code, emphasizing dignity over terror. Abolishing Lingchi became a symbol of modernization. The final push came with a comprehensive legal reform led by figures like Shen Jiaben. In 1905, an imperial edict formally ended Lingchi and other cruel punishments. This marked a turning point, a break from 1,000 years of punitive terror. The end of Lingchi signaled a shift toward a more rational, humane justice system. It was the first step on a long road to legal modernity. The fear of Lingchi shaped Chinese society for centuries. It wasn't just fear of death, but of public agony and spiritual destruction. This terror encouraged obedience and conformity. The law was seen as a force to be feared, not trusted. People avoided the legal system, settling disputes privately. Public executions brutalized society, normalizing extreme violence. Crowds watched, both horrified and fascinated. Lingchi left a scar on the national psyche. Even after its abolition, its memory lingered as a symbol of tyranny. Reformers saw ending Lingchi as essential to building a new China. But the echoes of 1,000 years of terror do not fade quickly. The fear of absolute power remains a theme in Chinese history. Lingchi was a statement of absolute power. The emperor's authority over life and death became terrifyingly real. The punishment reinforced the political and social hierarchy. Justice in imperial China was about restoring cosmic balance, not just retribution. Crimes like treason demanded punishments that matched their disruption. Lingchi was super justice, a punishment that destroyed body and spirit. Most people responded with fear and submission. The system left no room for dissent. The fear of Lingchi created a conservative, stable society, but at a terrible cost. The state's use of such cruelty revealed its own anxieties about rebellion and chaos. Lingchi was a brutal, defensive measure. It exposed a relationship built on coercion, not consent. The punishment tells us as much about the ruler's fears as the suffering of the condemned. Lingchi forces us to confront the dark side of power and justice. For 1,000 years, a cultured society practiced a punishment we now find unimaginable. It reminds us that ideas of justice and civilization change over time. Lingchi was the ultimate tool of terror, designed to haunt memory and enforce obedience. Its abolition marked a victory for a more humane vision of justice. The story warns us of the dangers of unchecked state power. Lingchi is a dark mirror, reflecting a world with different values and fears. It's a story we must not forget. The line between justice and cruelty